Hey, and welcome back. I just wanted to say thanks to all the subscribers. I should be at 5,000 by the end of the year, and I really appreciate the support. Been a lot of positive comments and feedback. I really enjoy the input, and I'm glad people are enjoying watching the videos. So keep the comments coming, and thanks. And with any luck, I'll be able to pay for that new B camera soon. My wife's Christmas present. Alright, so one of the best comments that came out of last week's video was from Wayne P. And he sent a link to some Gates power transmission belts that can be used on the Reeves drive. So thanks, Wayne, and you probably breathed new life into the Reeves drive. I did intend to take it apart and see if I could make it better at some point without changing the belts, but if those aren't too expensive, I may just wind up going ahead and getting some of them. I haven't figured out what size is needed yet, but there's a good sizing chart on the link that he sent, so I should be able to figure that out fairly easily. As you can see, there's not a whole lot going on here with the gear train. It's pretty easy, nothing complicated. This is the stud gear. It's a 48 tooth, and the small gear that's right here is 24 tooth, and that's related to threading, so you can adjust that and set those up. You can switch positions with them, and you can see that 24 tooth is the most common one that you would need. So that's the one that's installed there, and the 48 tooth is just a spare position there. It's not doing anything. It's just there so it doesn't get lost. So that's the first run, and it sounds like a bucket of bolts. There isn't any grease on any of the gears yet. They're just light assembly oil on the shafts. And I haven't really gotten this adjusted yet, but I figure out right away that here's the source of my noise, is the adjustment between these two gears. And after some playing around, I wind up getting it right and quieting it right down. I adjusted this several times, and this was the last time that I did it, and it seemed to be the best because it was the quietest, so I left it at that. I don't want to be talking during this next clip so you can hear what's going on. Most of the clanking you hear is coming from the reused drive, and I have the quick change gearbox set on the highest setting, which is not normal, but I just want to get everything moving. Man, she was ready for takeoff, wasn't she? So that was after about 30 minutes of runtime. It got pretty quiet, and I was happy with that. Still aggravated with the Reeves drive making racket, but we'll deal with that later. And you know you've got it properly lubricated when you got to clean up a little bit of mess. This rear cover is a little bit quirky to get aligned to the spindle, but after a little bit of playing around with it, it's no problem. And it's got a Stanley door hinge on it, so I thought that was pretty cool. This is the original junction box that came with the lathe, but I can't use the original switch cover, so I need to make a new one to use the components that I'm going to use. And here's a little trick for you. If you don't have anything to measure more than 6 inches precisely, you can use something that's a known distance and then just add to it. I know that's nothing earth-shattering or new, but maybe you haven't seen it before. And it'll only get you so far, but it does work to a point. I want the RPM display to have an equal border around the sides and the top, so I'm just figuring out what the side distance is, and then I'll just use that as the top distance, which happened to work out to 1/2 inch. I'm laying out the outside diameter of the RPM display just as a visual reference for layout. I actually had to deduct 50 thousandths all the way around that for the actual hole that will go in the plate to mount the display. And now comes way too much figuring as I'm trying to determine exactly where to lay out the switches and the potentiometer, which you'll see I have to redo a few times because I don't like the way it looks. But I also have to keep allowance for being able to get the wiring through the bottom of the junction box the way that it comes in, so the bottom switch can't be too low or I won't be able to get all of the wires to turn up through the bottom of the junction box. So I have to keep that in mind while I'm laying it out. And as you can see, I don't like the way this looks, so guess what? Let's redo. And that's one of the reasons why I use a mechanical pencil, is to do this kind of layout. If you do that with a scribe, then you wind up with a bunch of scribe marks all over the place, and you can't really determine which scribe mark is the right one. After a while, you kind of get lost. And this isn't super precise work, so it's all good for doing this. I usually reserve using a scribe for something that I know is not going to change, like whenever I trace this piece of aluminum to the outside of the junction box, I used a Sharpie to line out some black there, and then I scribed around the outside of the aluminum and marked it out that way. I know that's not going to change, so it is what it is. and it doesn't fit. That was easy to fix. I just eyeballed it and notched it out a little bit. That box is cast aluminum, so it has a slight taper to it. A little bit difficult to hold in the vise, so it was a little bit slow going. I try to solder and heat shrink whenever possible and reserve using solderless connectors for making final connections, terminations. But other than that, I'm going to try and solder it and heat shrink it. So moving right along, here's the apron. More on. You gotta love these old flathead screws, and there's a little trick for breaking them loose. And here's the real answer for breaking them loose is a hand impactor. If you've never seen one before, it's got a spring inside and it has kind of a cam action to it. And whenever you hit it, it jars and shocks the screw and causes the threads to unbind, basically. Works well, and I'm pretty sure it was designed because of flathead screws. There's a couple of shafts that are located to the apron casting by a set screw. Sorry about the lighting in this shot. I should have set up another light on the other side there so you could see better, but hey, I'm the cameraman and the guy that's doing the work, so I had somebody ask me in the comments, how did I keep track of all these parts? And this is one way right here, is just to put stuff back together as soon as you take it apart, as much as you can, so that, you know, all those widgets stay together and it makes it a lot easier. And usually what I do is I'll box up sub-assemblies like this. You know, all the apron parts go in one place and they'll stay there until I go to work on them again. And then I also lay out items in the order that I disassembled it from the very beginning of the project. So everything's laid out in a line, and I know it's hard to do that sometimes because you don't have the room. But if you can, that's the easiest way to keep track of it, because you can just look at it and you know the sequence that you took it apart in. So you know the order to put it back in, and it makes it much easier to figure out. Hey, thanks for watching, and since it's winter time, enjoy some fall.